And again, I just want to thank everyone for coming. My name is Sidney Jackson. I'm VP of Development for the New Jersey Symphony. Um, Welcome to Clem's Place, which I was at another event today, and I learned more and more about the remarkable human being that this room is named after. And I could go in more and more about that, but just put it this way: we're in the halls of Newark royalty with here at Clemens Place with Clement Price. So thank you, Mr. Price, and allowing me to have this space. Space in life, not just this space tonight. So again, welcome to Music and Resistance panel discussion. When you leave this evening, you are going to hear some remarkable things from remarkable people. I literally left our Monday conversation on Zoom like, this is gonna be fire. Like the Montel Williams, this is how we do it. Like, that was just bumping in my head. Again, you'll get, yes, I work for a classical org, but I just come correct, that's all. And so how did we get here? So, you know, what happens a lot is I go to concerts, I meet people, and I got to meet DBR, and I literally left saying, hey, you spoke about this opera, We Shall Not Be Moved. We should do a discussion when you're in Philadelphia. That didn't happen, but DBR, myself, and Aaron Lunsford Norton, our VP of Artistic, had this conversation because it was going to be with DBR and Bill T. Jones. And I literally left saying, we're still going to do this, but we're going to do it here in Newark. And I said, okay. I knew I wanted to do it with partner organizations. It's just how I love to do things. So I came to one event here that my colleague Ann Kim put on with, and these were a beautiful quartet, and it was set to poetry by Wynton Marsalis' son. We did it here in Clem's Place. I met Wayne. I knew I had to partner with him again. And then I knew about New Jersey Institute where's Laura? For social justice. I got it, come on. For and of are different, don't worry. I've worked with attorneys as well, so I know. And they are in the same building, so I wanted, again, to build that partnership. And that's really how we got here. I could go into a lot more, but I'll do that in a minute. I'd like to thank the Victoria Fund for funding tonight as well. Thank them very much. And I also want to thank all our funders across all the organizations for the support that you provide. Without you, we cannot do this work. And now to our panelists and moderator. Tonight, we have Les Trent moderating. Les is an Emmy-nominated investigative journalist with Inside Edition. You also might see Les in the next installment of Too Fast, Too Furious, Furious 11. Inside joke for us New Jersey Symphonyers, because Les is a car enthusiast, according to Instagram. Thank you, Les. We also, yes, come on. We also have Becky Bass, vocalist, actress, steel panist. Becky is just an all-around artist, as you will get to know. You could see Becky on the music theater stage at New Jersey Symphony this week, singing a great piece by DBR, and on film as well, on Amazon and HBO Max. And I think Becky and I are connected because when you look at Becky's bio, the first musical she mentions is Once on This Island, right? Which, again, brings back very vivid memories. When you are, as I say, Poe, you cannot afford to get the soundtrack. So what I used to do as a kid was I would watch PBS. This is why I love Jolie and what they do. And I would record PBS and get the soundtrack. And that's what I used for a really long time. That's how I got musicals and music in my life. So we're connected there. Come on. Thank you, Becky. And Yannick Wood, again, Director of Criminal Justice Reform Program at New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. You're going to hear so much from this remarkable young man. I cannot wait. I was wowed again on that conversation with the versatility that he brought and the depth around what we're going to talk about. And he is, again, 9 to 5, an attorney doing work, but he has a background and love for the arts as well. And so in his capacity at the Institute, he helps around youth incarceration system here in New Jersey to create initiatives to keep law enforcement accountable to the communities in which they serve. So thank you for that, Yannick. And then DBR, Daniel Bernard Roumain, for those. He is our resident artistic catalyst for the New Jersey Symphony. He's really embraced electronica, jazz, R&B, pop, hip-hop, gospel, and traditional African-American music, in addition to classical. And again, he's got a great piece this week. I can't wait to hear more about it. So thank you, DBR. And again, how we got here, I'm going to loop it, because if the panelists want to start making their way up. So I went to school to be a professional opera singer. And again, in this discussion, they reminded me that, me doing that was resistance in its own regard, right? And then I've been in social justice for about 10 years. So I helped a reproductive rights org. I've helped build families through adoption. I've been at the Urban League. The last place I came from, we provided free legal services to LGBTQ asylum seekers across the world. So this is like the perfect merge of my two loves, and I really want to show the historical value of arts and resistance and social change, right? So I'm going to shut up, but I do get the first question. Welcome again. I said I would ask the first question and then sit down. I'd like us to define resistance to our individual form of resistance and start there. All right?
That is actually the first question I was going to ask. And we have two, highly esteemed musical folks here. But I was actually going to ask the question first of Yannick, because you're the director of criminal justice reform at the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, and so the question is, classical music as an agent of change. What does that mean to you as an agent of criminal justice reform?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is definitely a very eclectic group of individuals up here. Very interesting conversation. So which question should I answer first? The first one or the second one? Well, maybe I'll choose the...
You choose.
Okay, I'll choose the first question.
Go ahead.
So what is resistance? For me, and I'm learning that resistance is... Sometimes resistance is existence, just being there, just being present and taking up space. Viewpoint, that was resistance. Resistance certainly could be protesting, and that's certain things that we've done for getting reparations in New Jersey, and that's something we're going to be. I'll talk a little bit about later on about a reparations council, which is going to be coming, and trying to address some of the racial. The wealth gap in New Jersey and some other significant disparities in New Jersey. Just being there and talking about it, and being at protest, that's resistance for me.
Great answer. Wow. Becky, woo!
That's a tough act to follow.
That's a tough act to follow, but Becky?
Whew. Resistance. I would say it is the action of fighting for what you believe in, which can go against the norm, or that can go against how people treat you, so the inequalities, and really pushing the limit of that in order to create change, in order to be seen, right, existence, in order to be heard. And that can be done through music, that can be done through speaking, that can be done through just showing up. And yeah, so for me personally, resistance, it's easy for me to talk about resistance or sing about resistance through music, through the arts, because that's what comes naturally to me. Speaking doesn't always come naturally to me, so it's easier for me to sing my thoughts and to show up in spaces that maybe other people would not like to see me in. So that would be my personal, I guess, definition of resistance.
Daniel.
So wonderful, and it's so wonderful to be here with you. Thank you for having us in this very important space, and John Coltrane keeping us honest. Right, yeah, I love it. I feel like I'm talking about resistance. So I feel like I'm in a very safe space. So thank you, Les. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Yannick. And thank you for everyone who's here and everyone online. I think that's so important. My mind just goes to classical music as resistance. Classical music is resistant. Classical music resists. So in that, my mind goes to how classical music endures. For me as a Black composer, there's always the threat of erasure. There's always the threat of the work not existing for our children, and by extension, do I exist? Mr. Coltrane, do you know? I think I say classical music because so much of our business has to deals with the score, a cultural documentation. It's evidence as much as it's resisting erasure. It's a document that holds time and place, purpose. At its best, it represents, whether it's Swan Lake or Stravinsky, Mr. Coltrane, Becky Bass, Roumain, I suppose. These scores matter. And then I think to myself, as we were talking about, I think of forgiveness as resistance. As a Black Haitian American man, what is my capacity to forgive? How does that show up in a score? And I think in working with the great Marpa Muti Joseph, who's not here, the librettist for the work Farah, which is joy in Arabic, I think it's so important that the first thing we will see in our next concert with the incredible New Jersey Symphony, and I say this lovingly, the lights go down and you appear on stage. This incredible, brilliant, Brown University educated, mind you, Black woman who occupies the privileged space on a classical music stage. You are the soloist. You are leading us in a song that is about joy and forgiveness. So in many ways, you embody resistance, reclamation, and I think revolution and resolve.
Let's go further and talk about Farah. Thank you. Beautiful. Farah, first of all, those of you who do not know, it will be performed this weekend, June 9th, 10th, and 11th. So you can still get tickets. And I want to go to something that was just brought up about your very existence being resistance, and especially when it comes to classical music. You do not see a lot of people of color in classical music. I was telling the group about how when my son was 8, my son now is a Marine. He is a captain, and his name is Morgan. He is Captain Morgan, yes. When he was 8 or 9, he went away to a band camp, orchestra camp. He played the viola. And I said I knew he was going to be okay because he was gone for 8 days and he never called home once. And on the Saturday, the week after they arrived, they put on a concert for the parents. And I think we all have the same reaction, those of us of color, when we look at an orchestra and we say, oh my gosh, look at that. Look, look, there's a black person right there. Yeah. And so to have that existence as a form of resistance it's important to us to look out and see ourselves represented. But I want to go to a recent study that was done on racial, ethnic, and gender diversity in the orchestra, and I think you know of this study, perhaps you do. It says, in some categories, little or no progress has been made since the 2013-14 season or earlier. Specifically, Black or African American musician representation has improved only very slightly since data collection began in 2010. In addition, Black or African American and multiracial music director representation actually decreased between 2013-14 and 2022 and 2023. And then it also talks about the proportion of women music directors working in larger budget orchestras also decreasing during this decade. So I guess the question is, how do you appeal to people of color to make them know that this is available to them and that this is theirs?
Well, I think the study is recently done by the League of American Orchestras. I proudly serve on their board. It is an important demographic study that took about, it's actually, that particular study, the intensive work was done in the last 2 to 3 years, and involves, even in the study itself, a certain amount of vulnerability and a certain amount of invitation. I understand, and I've understood this notion of can an orchestra represent us fully? I mean, all of us. I started playing the violin when I was 5 years old, and I remember watching live from Lincoln Center. It was a public television broadcast, PBS in South Florida. And that relationship between public television, public radio, and the orchestra, classical music, certain types of cultural programming, as we say it made a big impression on me. I felt invited in. It's really no different than, and I can say this serving on the board for the League of American Orchestras, when you walk towards NJPAC, the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, you will see something that you won't see in any other orchestra anywhere else. You will see our maestro, this Chinese woman. She is the only one. And there is something so important about that image and that invitation. The orchestra is as diverse as it can be now. And the orchestral field, by virtue of that report, is addressing something that has its own history, painful history. So, like anything that matters, it is a question of your son serves in the military. And I think to myself, I can't be a first responder or a second responder, but can I be third? Can I be fourth? What part can I play in changing things? Oftentimes it has to do with scale, but as we all know, it oftentimes has to do with a calling and then action. And for everyone who's here tonight and for everyone who's watching, I feel so confident about the very small role that I play in classical music, but more importantly, as my mother taught me, and my father, when you have a spotlight on you, when you have an opportunity to do something, to make a change, You have to take up the mantle. And in our business, oftentimes it means black and brown people and the LGBTQI plus community, the global majority, buying a ticket, tuning in, finding their role to play in the cultural initiatives of their community. And I'll just end with this. I don't know if this study exists, but I think this is something where my mind goes when I think about how the weapon of choice for your son changed from a viola into something else. So for all of us, the question may be, what is your weapon of choice, right? For me, it's a violin. I think for you, it's your voice. For all of us, what is your weapon of choice? And I say this because that is the tool. That is maybe the key to change and the invitation, right? So rather than answer the question, as a professor, I can't help but ask, what is your weapon of choice and how will it be deployed?
I don't know if you all noticed, but there's another microphone right here, and it is for you. So we will, throughout this conversation, open up the floor, and I'd like to know right now if any of you would like to take us in another direction. Yes, take the microphone, sir.
That's why I'm here. You see, my name is Roumain, and I live in Newark, a New Jersey resident. But I'm from Australia, and I studied music, and I'm also a solution architect at the moment. And to me, when I saw the title, Music and Resistance, it reminded me of our Liberation War in 1971, when some of the songs inspired the soldiers. You know, they were doctors coming from different, from parts of the society, right? And they were doctors, they're like laborers, they're engineers, they're farmers. But that song uplifted that motivation towards their own liberation. And those songs are embedded within the DNA of the country. So after 50 years, whenever we have an occasion, now we remember those songs that liberated the whole nation, right? So that was a resistance from the grassroots, to have a freedom in their own life. So to me now, how do I define the resistance in a modern era? And if you don't resist against unless you're oppressed, in a sense, right? So how we are oppressed in this timeline, in this modern day. Our tech giants are sort of an oppressor in terms of, in music. For example, Spotify. You see, there cannot be any broken business model that, in the history of business, that been established in such a glorified way, right? So, you know, so when a student, if I'm focusing on not the big stars, they're selling out stadiums, right? I'm talking about students who have spent that money on the music education and want to aspire to a professional music. And where do they stand? So do we have a platform to support those individuals just coming out fresh with a big dream? You know, you went to a opera school. Someone said that they went to an opera school and, you know, to study opera. But CD sales, those days are gone, right? So how do you support your livelihood in this modern day? So that's the reason I'm here. So one of the good things that I want to say that because being a solution architect and a musician, so I've actually teamed up with AWS at the moment. So we are developing a dedicated platform for professional musicians and to generate revenue stream. You say no, Spotify to have million stream, they don't buy you a pizza. Right? So how do you support your livelihood? So that we have to resist in that context as well. So that's an oppression from tech companies. So how do I bring justice? How do I stand up against that oppression? Thank you very much.
Woo! If that's a question, Becky, do you want to take it?
I mean,
You're doing it.
okay. Whew. It's heavy. It's heavy because it's so real. And you know, I will say that, you know, I don't have, whew, sorry, it's just, yeah, I mean, I have been very blessed to be able to, even I didn't go to an opera school, but I went to a good school, but still, like, I didn't study music, through schooling, and so this was self-taught through my family, through my culture, where I came from, which is St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, and having, I guess, that foundation, and then just really finding places where they saw me or they valued me, right? As a musician, as a person, as a woman of color, in this industry, you know, which is something else too I'd love to talk about at some point, how being, you know, you don't see very many women in many situations in terms of the music industry. So I don't know if I have an answer for you for that specific question, because that is something that needs to be spread out into the world, like an ongoing situation. Honestly, I just feel like we need like a union. I know there's a union of musicians, but I don't know, something stronger, something like it, amen. Because we need voices like yours, like ours, to really be able to make that change, right? The stars are fine. Yeah. The stars are good.
Actually, those who has taken music as their livelihood,
right.
their bread and butter,
That's right.
it's coming from the music.
That's right.
Music it can be a hobby for many, right?
That's right.
It can be an amateur, you know, go to a party and play something.
Right.
I'm not talking about that group,
Right.
but when you
Professionally. Yes.
as you're saying, sir, that concentrating on the musician, aspiring musician, musicians have university, they've spent 36,000
Yeah.
every year for 4 years.
Yeah.
Their parents. Do we have to have a second degree to support my music career?
No. So,
How do I do that?
yes. Okay. Well, so what I did, I mean, I just started to go out into my community, which was Rhode Island, and finding groups, again, that saw me, saw my value, saw what I could do, and said, hey, I want you involved with what I'm doing. Just like how how we began. I mean, it's so crazy and so wonderful at the same time. So going out and gigging, going out and working, going out and networking, that's how I've been able to build my career, is really, it's not the albums, it's not the CDs, it's not the music that's streaming, because of our current industry now. So I just started so I'll start the senior year of college. I did a professional theater show, and I met 2 alumni who worked in this theater with my university, but it had community members also. And just by being in that space, I met these alumni. The person who is now one of my mentors, his steel pan player, like, said, I'm going to New York and I need a new steel pan player. In Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, at Brown University, on this, you know, this random show. And so, but I believe that I was supposed to be there at that moment. And so I think too, as upcoming musicians, to really if you love it, keep going, keep putting yourselves in these situations to find your people, and you'll be able to grow a career. You'll just jump from one situation to another and build your network, and to really value your worth and to start charging for your worth. That's how I'm making a living. And believe me, it's a journey, right? It's a journey, it's hard. But if you keep pushing, like I've been doing this now for maybe 9 years or so professionally. And it's been a journey, but if you keep going out into the community, going out into certain places, you'll meet fabulous human beings like Daniel, and who will see you. Like, I mean, you know, to me, I was just a little girl from the Caribbean playing the pan, singing in Rhode Island. And Daniel saw something in me that we were able to work together enough, and now here we are. So I think, you know, it's a long answer, but to really, to me, it's as simple but as challenging as just keep doing what you're doing, going out there in your community and in this industry and trying to find your people in order to grow. That's what I would say.
Okay.
I mean,
I think that American music, especially in the Black community, has had has a long, long history of resistance messaging and fighting back. I want to talk about two classical pieces, though, by DBR, Twin Stars, and another one with the title, I Am a White Person Who blank, which is empty, who blank, black people. So, let's start with Twin Stars.
Okay.
Twin Stars was written in memory of Philando Castile. So let's talk about that to begin with. It is a beautiful piece. I love that it was put to, in the video I saw, to images that are pretty much images I think I would have thought of myself or maybe I'm thinking of the I'm a White Person that had the images associated with it, one or the other. But they were both beautiful pieces. So let's start with Twin Stars and just tell us your inspiration behind it, and how do you go about reaching the audience who perhaps would have been listening to an R&B version of that?
Yeah, I want to be. Well, in this moment, I'm looking to Yannick. We don't know each other, but I'm 52. You're not. You're this very young, accomplished. In fact, I think your name is Yannick Wood Esquire, right? That's important, and I find so much comfort in you. I see you and I see the best of us, and that makes me feel proud and that secure. I don't know if you have children or not, or want children. Well, you have children in this community, so you have children. And I think about you maybe being 4 years old in the backseat of your parents' car, and you woke up with them, and you're driving down the road, and you're pulled over, and your father, responsible person, pulls over, and within 47 seconds, your father is shot 7 times, and 5 enters his body. And your mother has or your father's partner has the wherewithal to start capturing that moment. And it's just hard for me to talk about it because when I was your age, I was so full of rage. Even saying it now, I genuflect to that kind of rage. I just want to fight back. I don't want to surrender. Forget about forgiveness. And again, what happens is, in a collaboration, you can instantly, if you meet someone for the first time sometimes, I don't know about your spirituality, but you just know this person is someone I should know. This person is going to be good for me. And Mark Bamuthi Joseph wrote a libretto that completely changed how I felt about what happened to Philando Castile, and what happened to Diamond Reynolds, his partner, and what happened to Diana, who was 4 years old in the back seat, saying, "Mommy, don't say anything. Mommy, I don't want you to get shooted." She's 10 years old now. And that piece begins with a kind of lullaby, because Mark took me, in his words, took me to a place. Do you remember the words?
I should have. I was.
Justice.
Justice running on twin
Oh, do you mind?
tracks. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Justice running on twin tracks, parallel lives on one. Her American father exercises his rights and shoots a glance at the stars in June.
Yes, yes.
Woo! That's when it hits.
Yes.
It's like embedded in you. Yes.
And, Becky sang that song, and I was like, and I told Aaron, who's the artistic director for the New Jersey Symphony, whatever the commission is, can we invite Becky to sing with our orchestra? Based on, did everybody hear that? Right? And that, Mark is talking about black matter, like the stars. Remember Carl Sagan? And he was able to think about maybe at the moment of his death, Philando was there. You dig? I'm Haitian. No one never really dies. And that Philando was there comforting her. And that, as children sometimes can do, she could see him. And there was, in the worst moment of our lives, that somehow Philando was able to comfort and take care of his family. And that's what Mark was talking about. And, you know, it's just a little bit hard for me because, like your work, a document becomes a historical document, and it holds a weight. And hopefully we evolve past it, right? And maybe evolve isn't the right word, but times change. Protest. That's in some ways what that piece, and I am a white person who blanks black people, those pieces were written during a time of masking and protest and George Floyd and Sandra Bland, and I was an angry black man, right? Coltrane. But I've got a son who's 14. The other day I said, you know, your mother who is Jewish and white, Zach, you know, you're black, you're half black, half white. No, Dad, I'm black and white. That's 14. He does not share my rage as much as he shares my DNA. So I'm just struggling in this moment because Aaron and Gabe, who is the executive director of the New Jersey Symphony, everything is an invitation. And they allowed me to change the commission that allowed for a piece that speaks about forgiveness, a proclamation of a place that I love, New Jersey, you. And that Becky could help us think past what is always framed in terms of our black bodies. You know, I love you, Yannick, I do. But you, on the wrong night with the wrong officer, like Philando, you're gone. And I think that what you're doing is when you get out on that stage with our maestro, there is something so important and necessary for that voice to be heard as a kind of balm in Gilead, right? And I think that your work is also centered on, well, healing and forgiveness. Would you say?
Restorative justice was what we were talking about. Yeah.
Let's bring it to Yannick, actually, because, you know, what you may not know about Yannick is that he's also a pianist, and he started off playing the violin. So, you know, I'm always impressed when I see people who, you know, now he's a lawyer who can use both parts of their brain that way. It really is impressive. Maybe we can pick up from the conversation that we were just having about resistance, and we had an interesting conversation on the phone, and where you were talking about just your perspective on music and resistance and the kids that you deal with, and just give us give some insight.
Yes, yeah. Actually, before I answer that, I just have to respond to something you were talking about. No. It was phenomenal. And I was listening to that piece about justice running on twin tracks, and all too often, that's what we see here, even in New Jersey. You know, we like to think of ourselves as being, you know, a very blue, progressive state, but we have enormous racial disparities in, you know, just for example, police are 3 times more likely to use force against black individuals than white individuals in New Jersey. Or a black youth is 18 times more likely to be incarcerated than the white youth, even when they commit most offenses at similar rates. You know, that's just an example of what we're dealing with here. And a lot of my work is trying to address those twin tracks in the justice system or the legal system. And one of the things that we're trying to work on is disassociating public safety away from policing. Because a lot of times people think, oh, more police, that's just public safety. And it's not linear like that. A lot of times it's just communities getting the tools that they need in order to succeed. And then there was a question from the audience about just connecting all these things about, it was like, how do you, what I heard from the question is, how do you pay someone their worth so that way they can continue to do the work that they need? Okay. Well, is a theme and variation I see with a lot of these community-based service providers who are they're already in the communities trying to do the work for public safety. They don't even need to have police involved to do the work, and they just need the funding. And a mark of a society and the mark of a society's values is how they spend their money. You know, we look at our budget document, it's a moral document. And so in New Jersey, we don't spend nearly as much as we need to for community-based programs for community in order to keep itself safe. And same thing with the arts. It's a theme and variation. We see all these different things right here. So I was just, you know, and there was something about Philando Castile being killed that really, really bothered me. But you know, recently in New Jersey, we had somebody else who was killed in the middle of a mental health crisis. Yeah, Najee Seabrooks in Patterson, and it was very tragic. And he was part of a group, Patterson Healing Collective, and these are it's a local nonprofit that does violence intervention. They get people who are the victims of gun violence, and then they turn them into being incredible messengers in their communities, and they keep people safe in their own communities. And he actually was a part of that, and he was in his own he was in his apartment, and he had a mental health crisis, and he called 911, and police showed up, and then I don't understand how if you call for help in a mental health crisis, you end up getting shot yourself. And the tragic part was that his coworkers, who were all mental health trained professionals, were outside the door, and they were right outside the door, and he was calling for them to help. But that just brings me back to the point I was saying before, that we need to fund the people who are already doing work in their communities. We need to fund arts programs, because arts programs are prevention. It's you know, we talk about how do we get, you know, we're talking about youth, right? And how do we get youth to engage in helpful behaviors? How do we get them into classical music young? Well, investing in those arts programs, because they will enjoy the arts programs, but also if they're engaging in arts, then they're not engaging in the other harmful behaviors, which might set them down the track to being introduced into the youth justice system. So I feel like there's a lot of, you know, synergies. There's a lot of connection between the conversation, you know, between the arts, communities keeping themselves safe. So yeah.
How are you not running for president? I'm right? This is it.
Not yet. Not yet. Let's open it up to another question. Anybody? Ladies? Don't be shy.
Do we need the lights to come up at all, or? Okay.
So, first of all, it's a fantastic conversation, so I want to thank the Symphony for organizing and hosting this.
Thank you.
Is the mic on?
The point you made earlier about the...
I think there's a switch maybe on the. Great, we can see everyone.
Okay, you wouldn't know I was in broadcasting.
You guys turn your mics on?
I'm on the pencil pushing side of the business. The point you made earlier about the sort of historic context of protest music, resistance music, within popular music is known. So everything from reggae music to R&B music to protest music of the 60s, jazz music. This is a very interesting conversation around classical music, because that's not what it's known for. And historically, the audiences that classical music reach aren't traditionally oppressed people struggling for or resisting against something. So I'm wondering if what you're doing, DBR, are you a unicorn, or are there other examples of what you're doing in the classical music world that would give us hope that the music can reach down to levels where people who are impacted are getting the message through a different music?
Yes, there are. I mean, I stand on the shoulders. And, I mean, you could probably look at any cultural expression, any legal expression, medicine. You could probably look at the culture of America, and black and brown people and others have always been there. Specifically right now, there are amazing composers, Jesse Montgomery, Carlos Simon. There's a long list of composers doing really important work. But before that, Florence Price, William Grant Still, Samuel Coolidge Taylor. I mean, there's a long history of erasure also and silencing, which is why, keeping this all connected, Spotify does become important, right? 135,000, I think that's the number. Yes, exactly.
In terms of return.
Publication as resistance. 135,000 degrees, bachelors of music, are given out each year. There aren't that many jobs, right? But going back to your question, I do think that during the pandemic, there was a stasis that allowed us to really examine and try to understand how those wrongs happened. So I do think that we're in a type of renaissance right now where, save for a kind of moral amnesia, part of resistance will be not forgetting some of the agreements we made during the pandemic, which involved who came before, right? One of the founders, one of the first conductors of this orchestra was a black man. Right? And I'm forgetting his name, so forgive me. But it's in a wonderful New York Times article that is out right now, in which there's a photograph of him. I did not even know this, and it's wonderfully jarring. If anybody knows his name or can research it. One more time? Oh, Henry Lewis. Oh, wow. See, Henry Lewis. I'm still seeing his face. Henry Lewis. So, yes, there are, hearing you speak, my mind goes to, oh, wow, I want to write something for a narrator and orchestra and to have you embody the role. Because it will, you talked about a moral document, a theme and variations. So that's how I think a lot of young composers, like Jesse Montgomery, like Carlos Simon, and a lot of young performers who they've recently had, Randall Gooseby, just as important, right? Yeah.
Can I add something too? So I think also, like you mentioned and Yannick mentioned, like it's very important that we continue these arts programs in our schools, which is crazy that many times music and arts is the first thing to go in schools these days, which is an absolute shame. So having that, and then also access, I think, is a huge thing in terms of resistance, because the community, can they afford to go to the orchestra? Can they afford to come in? Maybe not, you know? And so, and I'm deviating a little bit, but you know, for more artists, more composers, more outreach to people of color, oppressed people, like how do they come in the door? And I think another form of resistance could be, you know, how, as our roles as performing arts centers or symphonies, like how can we find an opportunity to invite these people into our doors so they can experience pieces like Daniel's, like many of the other composers you mentioned? How do we also get them in the door too? And so I know out in Rhode Island they're doing, they're just starting to do something called like a pay what you can evening, you know, in order to invite your community in so they can see, oh wow, it's not just white people performing in a symphony or writing certain music, not just class, you know, not just the back in the day of the Verdi and the, you know, everything the back in the day. It's composers who are talking about real issues, things that we're experiencing every moment of the day as a person of color. And so, yeah, just wanted to invite that in the space too of how do we continue to build outreach into classical music.
Yes. And I think people just knowing of your existence, Daniel, people of young kids of color just knowing your existence, I think is really, you know, that's how you inspire these kids to.
Yeah, and your work in television, right? We need you less, right? We need more of you. And when, I mean, the question for you is, what's your journey been like? Right. No, I mean,
The moderator is now
Right.
Daniel.
I mean, well,
We switched
Turn the
roles real
question on the
quick.
moderator.
yeah, but you know, I mean, it is, well, I mean,
Well, my journey actually started in Canada. I am half Canadian. I grew up there, and I would say that I was fortunate in that I always had great mentors, and so when I started my career in Buffalo, behind the scenes, first in radio, and then as a show producer, which was basically writing the entire show, you know, I was always geared towards being on air. I knew it was going to take me a while to get there. And I also knew, unfortunately, that even in a city like Buffalo, which is, you know, 30% African American, there were no main anchors of color. They had them over the years. There were probably 2 or 3 over the years. And I became a weekend anchor. And I actually had a black co-anchor. So we were the first black co-anchoring team. And it was great, but I knew that I was probably never going to get the main anchor job. So, you know, you find that you have to, that you do other things. I mean, you realize that your career trajectory is going to be different. So what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to leave Buffalo. I got a job offer in San Francisco, which at the time was the number 5 market. So I went from 50 or 30 something at the time to the number 5 market. And I said to myself at the time, I am just going to be the best reporter that I can be, because news directors see you a certain way. So if I knew that when I left the anchor desk in Buffalo to be a reporter, that was probably going to be the rest of my career. And I came to terms with it, and I actually realized that it was the better path, because anchors come and go. You know, I have a lot of friends who are anchors, and they've been to 20 different markets. I've been at Inside Edition now for, what is this? This is 2023, for close to 30 years with the company, because I worked at Inside Edition, thank you, and then I worked before that at their sister show, which was called American Journal, and then I was at Extra for 2 years in between there. So yeah, I had, you know, there were obstacles along the way, but I just found other ways to get around them. Yeah. I wanted to bring up one other thing. You know, when I talk about how important it is for young people of color and how impressed they are by people like you, I also think about things like a movie that is coming out right now, Chevalier. And I don't think I ever knew that Chevalier was black until I saw the movie trailer. How important are things, these historical things, to getting the message out?
yeah, I mean, I first heard his name, gosh, so I know the date only because it was my first year of college at Vanderbilt University, which was 1989, and Dominique Renee Delerma, who was the co-founder of the Center for Black Music Research in Chicago, had put out a record set of recordings by black composers. And his violin concerto was recorded by the Chicago Symphony under the direction of Paul Friedman. Oh, sorry, all these people have gone, you know, but not forgotten. But that's the first time I ever heard a black composer, a contemporary of Mozart. And by the way, a very diverse orchestra. It's not the Chicago Symphony, it's the Chicago Sinfonietta. You have to understand how that orchestra works in the city of Chicago, by the way. It's a very important orchestra. I believe founded by Paul Friedman, who was a black conductor, pianist, a historian, by the way, a scholar. And Dr. Renee Delerma and Sam Floyd, both black men, started the Center for Black Music Research in Chicago, which put out this record. All of it, this is all connected. So the entrepreneurial spirit, and I would say the social entrepreneurial spirit of black artists, is something that's also a very important part of the culture. And one person or artist helping, and I don't want to say, one artist being able to invite in or collaborate, there we go, collaborate with another artist is key to the resistance. I think it's lovingly probably the best way to have that balm, to be responsive, to be that third or fourth responder, is through collaboration. Collaboration does not have to be restricted by color or gender. And whether it's Aaron or Lexi or Gabe or Judy, I'm just putting out names, some who know, those who know, or Dan, collaboration, documentation collaboration can afford or offer or prevent erasure. So that's the first time I heard the Chevalier. And the movie has, I think, done moderately well in terms of that industry. I know Michael Abels, wonderful composer, who helped in doing the soundtrack, who recently, by the way, won the Pulitzer Prize along with Rhiannon Gibbons for his opera. Yeah. So I think we're making progress, and I think we're articulating how that progress is being made. So you're right. That movie, I'm sure, involved a lot of producers, some of which who are producers of color in Hollywood, which, my understanding, that movie took well over 10 years to finally make it from, and this is the process of movie making, to make it to our television screens and eventually, a streaming vehicle. But yeah, I think if we're mindful, we can be responsible in terms of who we collaborate with as well. That's also a curatorial practice that's very important.
Hi. How you doing? Anybody else have any questions?
Oh, I was going to say we have an online question.
Oh, we have an online
Excellent.
question.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, so this one's from the live stream, Bill May. Does anyone on the panel know about Kevin Maynard and Trilogy, an opera company?
I do not. I would love to know more. Kevin Maynard. Okay.
We know about it because the New Jersey Symphony has collaborated with Trilogy a few times. Kevin Maynard is a fantastic black opera singer who did
You know where the microphone is, right? No.
He's also working.
I know you are. Here's our videographer on the microphone.
Yeah, Kevin Maynard is great. You should all look into Trilogy Opera. We were fortunate enough at the New Jersey Symphony over COVID to do a virtual production of his Emmett Till opera. It's really good. You can see it on our New Jersey Symphony YouTube page. But yeah, they are a Newark-based opera company. Kevin Maynard's a really great guy. If anybody's unfamiliar with them, you should look them up. He's one of the great black men doing great things with opera right now. So.
Oh, we need you. Please. Give a hand. Give a hand. That helps us. Come on up. Yes, we need you. We need you.
So I'm Lori Scott Pickens, and I'm the president of the board of Newark School of the Arts. And I'm fascinated by this discussion. I shouldn't have run up here. I might have. Hi, Yannick. I get all your emails.
Hi.
Kevin Maynard is on our board and has been on our board for more than 30 years. And so he is very popular and has done a lot of things, Othello, to name a few, encouraging students and young black people being involved in arts and social justice. So my colleague and I, my vice president, Carmen Corral, is sitting back there. We could not be here and not support what the photographer said about Kevin, because he is a anchor institution here in the city of Newark around opera and the cultural arts.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, go back to the microphone, because there are a few things that I think that we need to make sure that everybody here and online knows, and that is where people can go on social media to find all of this information and especially upcoming shows.
So I don't know where you can go for Trilogy, but I know that if you go to newarkschoolofthearts.org, that someone there can direct you to Trilogy. And I'm sure if you Google it, then and if you Google Kevin, you'll find him, because he's very prominent, very well respected, very well connected. I say it sincerely, he's an anchor institution in the city of Newark around the arts and social justice, and for young people of color, and everybody actually. But no, Carmen and I couldn't go back home if we did not.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Can
I believe we are going to wrap this up.
Can I also
unless
say
we have
something
any other? Yes.
Yes,
Becky.
yes, and because I also want to throw something in there too, because just how wonderful the New Jersey Symphony is, also because they are agents of change in order to collaborate and invite these artists of color to write pieces that maybe other or symphony orchestras may not want to take on, may not want to take that risk to speak the truth or to speak, the perspective of people of color. And so I also just wanted to throw that in there, how important that is in order to create and be resistors, right? Create
So
change.
please, to all of you watching out there, please support New Jersey Symphony and the arts and these artists and this wonderful lawyer. Thank you all for coming through the Canadian firestorm. I know it was treacherous for a minute out there, but we all did well. And you know what? We're going to be mingling around here, so if you have any other questions or interactions you'd like with these wonderful panelists, the bar is right there. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Thank you, Les.